Coffee is one of the most beloved beverages on the planet. In fact, it's so beloved that globally, approximately 2.25 billion cups are consumed per day. And to be quite frank, I may contribute a lot to that statistic. There's nothing I love more than having my butler bring me a nice hot cup of joe first thing in the morning. And since many people live by the "don't talk to me before I've had my coffee" mantra, it's no surprise that people are willing to shell out a fair amount of money to get their fix. In the United States alone, the average person will spend $1,100 per year just on their coffee. In general, that $1,100 stems from your standard fare from Dunkin' or Starbucks or Coffee Bean. But there's coffee out there that costs a lot more than $2 a cup. What if I told you there was coffee that is 5, 10, even 30 times as expensive as that? Well, today we're going to take a look at the most expensive coffee that money can buy. Some are grown in small batches in remote tropical villages, and others come from less, well, regal places. Ethiopian Cup of Excellence. Now, don't get me wrong. When I'm in London, I love a cup of tea. However, there's something excellent about having a steaming hot, aromatic cup of coffee on a rainy, foggy morning in a cafe along a cobblestone street. And if you happen to be in London now, you can get one incredible but expensive cup of coffee that is a cup of excellence. And I mean that literally. The Ethiopian Cup of Excellence is being offered at Queen's of Mayfair, a small cafe in central London. But you might want to quickly break open your piggy bank if you plan on taking the tube over to the cafe, because one cup will cost you a whopping $64, and there are only 15 available. The particular beans used to make the coffee were sourced from Ethiopia and have been graded a 91.08 out of 95 by an expert of panel judges in the Cup of Excellence competition. The beans themselves retail for a startling $2,600 per kilogram. The Cup of Excellence coffee is brewed tableside by a barista using a V-shaped filter. It is brewed drip by drip and served in a crystal glass, because you might as well make it as fancy as possible if you're going to shell out that much money for a cup of joe. Kopi Luwak. The food and agriculture industry isn't for the faint of heart. There is a rather dark path your food takes from the place it is sourced to the perfectly stocked shelves at your local supermarket. Sometimes that path involves deforestation or child labor, and sometimes that path involves feces, specifically civet feces. One of the most expensive coffees on earth does indeed come from coffee beans, but those coffee beans aren't plucked off trees. Kopi Luwak, which literally translates to civet coffee, is coffee made from the partially digested coffee beans found in civets' feces. Well, that sure makes you want a cup, doesn't it? If that wasn't enough to turn you off, well, know that Kopi Luwak doesn't come cheap. It'll cost you between $35 and $100 per cup, or between $100 and $600 per pound. But how can there be such a drastic price variation? Well, primarily because most Kopi Luwak isn't actually Kopi Luwak. It is estimated that 50 times more Kopi Luwak is sold than produced, so you can do the math there on how many people are managing to have a real cup of one. And while it may seem like this coffee is some sort of fad, that's only partially true. Civet coffee is believed to have first been ingested in the 18th century, when the Dutch colonized Java and Indonesia and took over coffee plantations there. During this time, native farmers and plantation workers were strictly prohibited from picking any coffee beans from trees, so they found an alternative. Civet coffee was soon made by the plantation owners in the 19th century, who believed it was higher quality because civets picked out only the finest coffee beans to eat. In the 1990s, Kopi Luwak took off after a book and several movies propelled it into the limelight. Unfortunately, this rise in demand led to some inhumane practices. Civets are kept in cages and force-fed coffee beans so sellers can make as much Kopi Luwak as possible impossible to sell. Not only is this practice cruel and harmful to the civet population, it has also raised red flags about the possibility of a zoonotic disease spreading. So, is Kopi Luwak really that much better than actual coffee? Well, the natives in Java and Indonesia were onto something. When the coffee bean goes through digestion, digestive enzymes cause the bean's proteins to break down and fundamentally change. The partially digested bean is then lower in acidity, and it is lauded for having quite a smoother finish. Elephant coffee, black ivory coffee. That all being said, civet feces aren't the only type of feces the world has turned to get a delicious cup of joe. However, the next type comes from a much bigger animal. If you've ever been near an elephant, well, chances are you've probably never thought that their intestines are the perfect place to process coffee beans. But Blake Dinkin, owner of Black Ivory Coffee Company, thought exactly that. He created a sustainable initiative that works with local elephant carers to harvest coffee beans from elephant feces. Though he wasn't the first to do this. The Golden Triangle Asian Elephant Foundation was actually the company who pioneered the use of this type of coffee. His company is just the one who brought it into the limelight. The coffee cherries are sourced in Thailand and are harvested from trees up to 1,500 meters in elevation. The elephants are then fed the coffee cherries, which are mixed in with their preferred food. The digested beans are picked up by the local workers and then sent to a local high school, where the final year students are paid to wash, rake, and sun-dry the beans. So, what's so special about these beans? Well, elephants use a fermentation process to break down the cellulose in their foods. With the coffee beans, this brings out a flavor that is described as sweet and fruity. Hard to believe anything sweet and fruity can come out of an elephant dung, but I suppose the reviews don't lie. The resulting drink is said to be a hybrid between coffee and tea, with a chocolatey, cherry taste. It takes a long time to produce, and it is an expensive process, so Black Ivory coffee is now primarily sold in certain 5-star hotels. Elida Geisha. The final coffee on our list doesn't come from feces, but it does come from a rather interesting place. Picture this. You're in the western highlands of Panama. Around you, you see an expanse of varying climates and terrains, dense rainforests teeming with wildlife, and mountain forests that are heavy with humidity and full of forgotten ruins. But where you are, there's a chill in the air, a bite that reminds you the world gets pretty cold when you're on an 11,411-foot tall volcano. Around here is where you'll find the reserve that grows Elida Geisha Natural 1029 coffee. The coffee beans at the reserve are special because the cold air causes the trees to grow at a much slower pace, 2 to 3 times slower than the average tree. This alters the flavor of the coffee, but it also means the cost of coffee beans is increased due to the longer production time. The beans are harvested after a long growing season, and then they are crushed into a uniform powder and sold for a pretty hefty price. It'll cost you around $100 for 18 grams, and 18 grams is only enough for an 8-ounce cup of coffee. For reference, that's 4 ounces smaller than Starbucks' tall-sized drink, and 8 ounces smaller than Dunkin' Donuts small. The coffee is said to be complex with delicate flavors, including passion fruit, orchid, cocoa, and tangerine zest. It is said to have a vibrant acidity and a silky mouthfeel, because, well, come on, who doesn't love a silky mouthfeel? So, there you have it, the most expensive cup of coffee in the world. Are there any of these you'd like to try? Let me know in the comments down below, and also let me know what your favorite coffee is. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe. Oh, and maybe turn on post notifications for the one time. If you don't mind me, it's time for my morning cup of joe.